Legacy of bloodshed, Columbus was paid off. Infiltrating a peaceful collective. In Jesus' name, they were so deceptive. That's why I got to stick to my culture, religion.
The roll call was an event that was the idea or brainchild of a number of interested and concerned citizens here in Denmark. Those Danish people who have been sensitized to their history in the Danish West Indies and the history of the Danish state and the royal family in the Danish West Indies. And so they have organized here in Denmark and have launched the Danish Movement for Virgin Islands Reconciliation, formerly known as Carida. Cari, short for Caribbean, and of course the suffix da represents Denmark. And so the roll call was an event held on the 13th of August 2010 at the University of Copenhagen, where a new NGO, Carida, was launched. We had a number of concerned and interested people come out and sign up to be members. A board was formed as well. And I was installed as the inaugural chairman. And so I perhaps will serve for a year to give vision and inspiration to the idea of reconciliation and to perhaps assist in creating some of those initiatives and programs that will perhaps set the standard for what reconciliation should look like coming from Denmark.
That's why I got to stick to my culture, religion. Pull up with dirty imposter.
We want the reparation.
Everything
the one to why and I blood to the tears, African sacrifice. We want the reparation. Stole our inheritance and
It is the inalienable human right of every person to have self-determination. And so, when we revisit the history and the sale of a people and the land that had become native to them, from Denmark to the United States, a sale from one colonizing nation to another, then we will understand the context in which we're speaking about repair. And so, if it was, we can consider that before the sale in 1917, this African ex-slave people were not Danish citizens, but still had to petition the king for their civil liberties. We find 1915, David Hamilton Jackson, the leader of the St. Croix Labor Union, who had waged many strikes against the Danish plantocracy on the island of St. Croix. We find in 1915 him traveling to Denmark to petition the king for the right or the freedom of assembly, also petitioning the king for the freedom of press. We find after the sale in 1917 that these people were not American citizens and had to fight for civil liberties there. I mean, what was the right of a black man or a black woman in America in 1917? You know, Plessy versus Ferguson. I mean, had there been Brown versus the Board of Education, did the black man or black woman have the right to vote? Had there been any integration in society? Or was Jim Crow still the order of the day? And so we find that this is the country that Denmark sold our people to, the most racist nation then on the face of the earth. It makes no difference now in the year 2010 that Barack Obama is the president, because in the Virgin Islands, we had no right to participate in that U.S. election, even though they say that we are U.S. citizens. We have no vote for the U.S. president. Our representative in Congress is merely and only a delegate, having no vote on the floor. We have no representation at the United Nations. But yet still, our young men and women journey thousands of miles across the sea on behalf of the U.S. government to die in wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and their bodies come back in coffins with U.S. flags. So essentially we are merely subjects, and we are a non-people. It is sad to say, but where is our representation? People of the Virgin Islands contribute more than $1 billion every year to the U.S. National Treasury in taxes that are collected from the production of rum and oil. And so when you ask about independence, when on August 11th, 2010, we can find a Boston University and professor also employed by the IMF and the World Bank having officially declared the United States bankrupt. What is to say that in the 21st century we won't find the United States needing money and seeking to sell these very precious islands again? We will consider that in the year 1917, $25 million in gold bullion resulting from the sale of St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John represented 50% of Denmark's national budget. And so it is not far-reaching to say that these islands have been a very significant possession and colonial possession of many European nations, even going back before Denmark. So I think that independence perhaps is something that will be looked at very seriously in the future. For now, we are engaged in our 5th Constitutional Convention, and it has recently been rejected by the U.S. Congress, citing its unconstitutionality, which is very ironic. But we are a people that are awakening from our sleep and slumber, and from the great and dark cloud that is the result of that slavery era and that colonial period. We are now finding our minds again, and mental emancipation is first and foremost a priority when it comes to our humanity.
Sacrifice, we want the reparation. Stole our inheritance and give a perverted governance. Because we want the reparation. Prepare to return to mama. And I want the reparation for a nation. Hey, they make payment to the Jews, make payment to the...
I think that Rastafari is a very strong and profound impact upon the struggle and upon the movement and upon reparations, not only in the former Danish West Indies, but all throughout the African diaspora and the world. You know, Haile Selassie as a leader, as father of a nation, as a spiritual teacher, as the 225th king to sit on the Davidic throne represents more than just a religion or a spiritual calling. And you can consider that the man that established or created democracy is no longer here, or the man that created capitalism or Christianity no longer here. But when you see that those institutions are very alive and well today, it is then you will understand the impact of Haile Selassie and Rastafari upon people all over the world. He was and is and represents the ultimate humanitarian, and human rights leader. And to be indigenous to Africa and to, as prophesied, stretch forth that Ethiopian hand to the diaspora and call for the repair and to the return of the ex-slave or enslaved descendants is no small thing. When you revisit the Berlin Conference, the gathering of those men who perhaps were brothers and uncles and cousins that carved up the African continent, and when you remember that it was only Ethiopia and Liberia that were left untouched, you will understand that in 1850, the man who is known as the father of Pan-Africanism left from the Danish West Indies, the island of St. Thomas, and went to Liberia to become a premier statesman there, and worked hand in hand with Menelik Selassie's father to bring about not only the repatriation, but in fact the repair of all of the African descendants in the diaspora. And so, these are men who have been more than inspiration. These are men and leaders and spiritual teachers whose ideas and concepts of repair and reparation and humanity they have been institutionalized, right? And they are fundamental, not only in the reparations movement, but in the movement for the repair of humanity all over the world. So when Rastafari spoke to the League of Nations, he wasn't just speaking to Rastafarians or Africans in the diaspora, it was to the whole world. And so it is in that context that you understand the impact of Rastafari upon the Danish or the former Danish West Indies, the now U.S. Virgin Islands, and the descendants of ex-slaves that are there today.